eyes are on the southern border of the United States as President Trump has ordered the National Guard to the border. We've got a bunch of troops there. Joining me right now is the DPS Director, Frank Milstead. Colonel, thanks for being here.
No, thanks for addressing this issue. It's an interesting time in Arizona. The border is obviously on everybody's mind, and it's a great time to have this conversation.
We know that the southern border is very susceptible to incursion. We know there are people coming across committing crimes. Vico Valley is so well known in the community of law enforcement. You have a unique approach, something you've put together with our governor called the Border Strikeforce. What is the Border Strikeforce and what do they do?
So we went to the legislature back in 2015 and we asked for some additional dollars to add some troopers to southern Arizona. I set out on a mission to build a very strong working relationship with my partners at Customs and Border Protection, and that is your Customs guys wearing the blue, and that's your Border Patrol agents wearing green. And we work collaboratively now on our interdiction efforts. Right now, as we speak today, I've got 26 canines out in southern Arizona working the highways. I've got guys out in the deserts today working with Bureau of Land Management, working with ATF, working with the FBI, working with Customs and Border Protection, all of them out there trying to stop and interdict those who are bringing illegal drugs into Arizona and America. We're the front door for bringing drugs in. The cartels have an incredible business acumen. They've been doing it for 100 years, so we're trying to fight back.
Hearing the stories of how the drug cartels actually have scouts on the hills in Vico Valley and other places where they're watching you. It's not just you surveilling them. They're actually watching the actions of Border Patrol and Highway Patrol and local law enforcement and relaying that message to their cartel members that are bringing things into the country.
It's crazy and it's maddening because they are, if you, an American citizen, you wanted to set up an illegal radio system on a hilltop in southern Arizona, the FCC would shut you down. Somebody would tell you you can't do it. Because they're from another country and it's illegal, we are unable to do anything other than to go and eradicate their sites and bring them down and arrest them for being here. But the radio systems themselves, we can't interrupt, we can't impede the transmission, because until we actually have those people in custody, we can't prove that they're doing it here illegally. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
And for you to go for it also shows the magnitude of what they're doing. If they are so well structured that they're building radio towers, that shows you the dollar amount that they're bringing through, that they're spending that kind of resources on just surveilling you.
So think about it this way. There's 62 million Americans addicted to drugs. Last year, more people died from opioid overdoses than they did in car crashes. I mean, it's like close to 50,000 people. You talk about gun violence, you talk about suicide, whatever it is, opioid deaths outpace that. So as long as there's that desire, the need, they're going to fulfill the need, and they're bringing in it by the cubic metric ton.
So how does the addition of the National Guard at the border help the Border Strikeforce and Border Patrol?
You know, I think Governor Ducey said it best yesterday when we were down on the border. He says it really provides a surge of badges and guns down to the border. And really, the Guard, this isn't militarizing the border. This isn't tanks and troops and guys with M16s. This is pilots, it's analysts, people that can write reports, watch cameras. They're backstopping our efforts so we can take our administrative support people and push them out and let them do the law enforcement work. They don't even have law enforcement powers, they being the National Guard. That is something that's left to Customs and Border Protection and the Arizona Department of Public Safety and our sheriffs.
One of the things you mentioned was surveillance aircraft that you have. They can now provide pilots to fly that aircraft.
Yeah, we're working on that. It's still, it's amazing the bureaucracy, because you think that if you went to the National Guard and they were mobilized by the President of the United States and he said, hey, go help out, that all we'd have to say is come help us. But we're still battling some of the use of those pilots flying what they would call civilian aircraft. But we don't have enough pilots to use it. It's a great asset. It's an incredible a resource for all law enforcement, and not just for the state of Arizona, but for local and our federal partners.
When the Homeland Security Secretary was down there with you and the governor, what was her perception when she saw it firsthand, face to face?
So first off, Secretary Nielsen, she was very down to earth. She was very accommodating. My favorite thing that she asked both the governor and myself yesterday was what can we do? What can we do to help? How can I help? Which is something you don't normally get from people at that level, or you get from the federal government. They really want to be collaborative, but I think first off, she was very impressed with the relationships that have been built. I speak to my counterpart at Customs and Border Protection, Rudy Karish, every week. I think she was taken by the professionalism of her people as well at Border Patrol and Customs, and also the complexities of what goes on with moving commerce legally through the ports of entry and people, and then battling the smuggling of hard narcotics through the ports of entry. Most of the hard narcotics, the heroin, the fentanyl, the methamphetamine, those come through the ports. They can hide them in cars, hide them in cargo, hide them in places that you normally wouldn't look, and then the marijuana's coming through the deserts, and the people are coming through the deserts. And right now they're grabbing about 7 special interest aliens every day. So people from a special interest country, from Yemen, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from the Arabian Peninsula, people that are here for bad reasons.
As you can see, the DPS is not just DUIs and tickets and accidents. There's a lot more happening with the state police here in Arizona. One more segment with the Colonel. We're going to talk about a special part of what's happening and a new change to DNA. So stick around. You know, we talk about DPS. You've all seen the DPS highway patrol on the roads. You think about tickets, you think about DUIs and crashes. But it's such a diverse agency. And one of the things that you have are the crime labs around the state of Arizona.
Yes, I run 4 laboratories for those agencies that cannot do that themselves. You know, the Phoenix PDs, the Mesas of the world, they have full functioning crime labs. Now we are adding capacity to our lab that no one else in the state has, but that lab service is one of my duties.
So familial DNA, explain to me what that is and how it's changing DNA evidence gathering, or at least the results from DNA.
So it's really the future, and we're now the 12th state in the union to put this together. If we find a body fluid, let's say we just a drop of blood at a crime scene, we'll take that drop of blood and we'll put it into what's called CODIS. And it's an indexing system for DNA, and it's people that are in prison or known offenders and arrestees that their DNA is in the system. We do a comparative analysis and it says, yep, that DNA belongs to Mike Broomhead. We then come back to Mike Broomhead and we grab DNA and confirm that that is indeed you. So it's not just that you're in the database, we still have to confirm it. With familial DNA, and what happened in this case in Scottsdale is they had a known sample of DNA, but there was no known sample in the database to compare it to. By setting up this process with familial DNA, it doesn't just say it belongs to Mike Broomhead. It could be your brother, it could be your dad, it could be your son, it could be your uncle, and it'll just, through that hereditary strand, it would tell you it's somebody in that bloodline. So in this particular case in Scottsdale, we found a guy in an Arizona State Penitentiary for a felony crime that was in the familial line of this sample that had gone unknown for 3 years. This case is a 3-year-old cold case. So for us to use familial DNA, it has to be a cold case. All investigative means have to be exhausted, and it has to be violent or a homicide. In this case, it was a homicide of a female. We then did the work on the family line, and we identified this guy's brother as being the suspect.
And so this is really revolutionizing even further the DNA and the way you can identify people through DNA evidence.
Absolutely, because it expands the ability for us to look deeper into those strands. And interesting enough, and this was really unknown, it's just an added benefit, when the governor put into effect to test all sex assault kits. So this only works on male DNA, it's the YSTR DNA, but we're testing all sex assault kits now, and victims of violent crime are almost always female, or predominantly female, let's say it that way. This actually plays into that because we will actually be able to find more offenders of violence against women through this ability.
I've had the privilege of being the master of ceremonies for your Trooper of the Year ceremonies around the state. This is now the 2nd year in a row. Northern Arizona, Southern Arizona, and then in the Phoenix district. And what I've learned about DPS in the last 2 years is the diversity of what you do, the different dangers in Northern Arizona and the places where they are all alone without backup. Southern Arizona with the border, and then the dense urban area in the Phoenix area. DNA testing in your laboratories. I've learned so much about the people that work for you, and I've met so many people that are just absolutely professional at the job they do in your agency.
It's amazing, and it's really a culture that exists there. You know, and I came from city police departments. My first 25 years was a Phoenix cop, and then I was the chief in Mesa for 5 years. And this agency is completely different in the sense that it does have all those things: the Border Strikeforce and the Lab Service and State Radio, the Counterterrorism Center, the Governor's Protection Detail. And what you get to see doing those ceremonies is what I get to see every day. And thank you for doing that. I think you've done 5 now. We got 1 more to do next week. Everybody loves it. The way that you conduct the ceremony and your personal experiences all play well into what we do. But really, the culture of the Arizona Department of Public Safety, our motto is courteous vigilance. And if you look at that, that courteous vigilance plays out through the entire agency. And they pride themselves, whether they're changing a tire or writing a ticket or giving directions, or you know, the statewide SWAT teams doing an entry for Sholo, they pride themselves on the image and the reputation of this 7-point star that we all wear.
One of the stories in northern Arizona, Trooper Roanhorse, and how it was like something out of a movie. There was a drunk guy stuck on the railroad tracks that was over 300 pounds that didn't want to get out of the truck. And he pulls this guy out of the truck and drags him to safety as a train is running down his truck. That's just one story I remember from these ceremonies.
And you know, when we read that one, it sounds so fantastic that it must be somewhat sensationalized, but it really was that. Here's this trooper dragging a 300-pound guy out of his truck, and literally the train is hitting the truck as they clear the truck. I mean, like you said, just like you'd have seen it in Hollywood. And that is why when we did that particular one, I had the whole staff come up and get a picture with that guy, because that truly was a Medal of Valor recipient who deserved every inch of that award.
And laid his life on the line. I just want to say publicly thank you, as I've said before to you, but here so my audience can see it, for the work you do, the leadership, and what the state police do and how they represent the state of Arizona. They do a fantastic job, and I appreciate you coming down.
No, thank you, and it's an honor to be here and represent the men and women of law enforcement, and the governor allows me to have statewide influence on what we do. I'm a very, very fortunate guy.
Colonel Frank Milstead, we'll be back.